We now have a quorum. We'll call the Senate Minerals Committee to order, and we'll call roll call first.
Senator Beitman,
Excused.
Senator Cooper,
Here.
Senator Rothfuss,
Here.
Senator Wasserberger,
Here.
Chairman Anderson.
Here. We have one bill to come for us, this continuation from Friday, House Bill 131. I'm kind of conscious of our time. We've got to pass this bill today. So I've got 5 on the Zoom. How many do we have in the room that want to speak on this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 3, 6. You get 6?
Yep, I was 6.
6 in the room. So we got 11.
Well, Luke's agency, though.
That's okay.
I'm just saying that give him more time.
Oh, probably, huh?
Maybe 3 minutes a person, except for Luke.
So we're going to go 3 minutes per person. The agency will have just a little bit more time, and we'll start with the agency.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Luke Esch. I'm the Deputy Director of the Department of Environmental Quality. I will keep my comments brief, knowing that you're under a time crunch. In summary, this bill does a great deal to resolve the preemption concerns that NRC has raised regarding Articles 15 and 21 of our Environmental Quality Act. Currently in 1506 E, that provides legislative approval if waste is produced by a nuclear power facility that is generating in Wyoming. As it is currently structured, they still have to comply with 1502 through 1504, which involves the payment of a fee of approximately $1 million, a report by DEQ generating this report regarding the feasibility of it, as well as public participation. 1506 E3, however, provides that the department has to make a determination whether if that facility meets the safety requirements of our statutes. NRC believes that determination on the safety requirements is preempted by their involvement. So therefore, this bill goes a long way to resolve that by removing that oversight of the department about the safety consideration and leaves that within NRC's jurisdiction. It still requires an NRC license to construct and operate, and public participation is still a big part of that NRC involvement. We work with NRC through their NEPA process to provide input on that part. It requires the report to be submitted to the department regarding jobs created, local and state sales tax, and benefits and impacts from the project. And it also requires copies of any publicly available reports to be submitted to the department as well. So we feel that those aspects address a lot of what 1606E had already, but removes that preemption concern. The bill also modifies Article 21, which was formerly regarding small modular nuclear reactors, and advances the definition to being advanced reactors. The Article 21 also specifies that the Industrial Siting Act shall apply to those facilities to the extent it doesn't interfere with NRC. And we feel like that there will still be involvement of the Industrial Siting Division from the projects on that. And with that, I would stand for questions.
Questions for Luke? Questions for Luke? There's got to be a question. Okay, thank you,
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. Next in the room.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the Minerals Committee. Travis Detai, Executive Director of the Wyoming Mining Association. In support of the bill, I will be very brief. The uranium industry in Wyoming, our uranium producers, are fully in support of this bill. I'd like to address a little bit of some of the discussion and debate that happened in the other house. We really appreciate members of the body wanting to support the Wyoming uranium industry to start mining again. We feel that the best way to get our uranium production up and going is to move forward on this project. And this bill is a bill to clear some of the regulatory hurdles to make that possible. So the number one thing that this body can do to help our uranium industry is to move forward on this project. It's the simple fact of the matter, given the situation in Europe right now, we are dependent on Russia for our supply of nuclear fuel. And this is because of 40 years of policy that has taken the United States off the nuclear playing field. We don't have the capacity in this country to enrich. We don't have the capacity in this country to convert. We have every capacity to mine and produce uranium, but we have to get those other pieces in the puzzle. We have to get back on the playing field. And this project, the Kemmerer project, is the start of that. To move forward on that and to continue to pursue avenues at the federal and state level to develop our full nuclear capabilities of production, enrichment, conversion. And so, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, the Wyoming uranium industry is in full support of this bill, and we would urge you to move it forward. And I would stand for questions, Mr. Chairman.
Questions for Mr. Deti? Questions for Mr. Deti? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Deti.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next in the room.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Shannon Anderson on behalf of Powder River Basin Resource Council. I think you should have a set of proposed amendments in front of you. Thank you. And so I just go, in the interest of time, I'll just go over a couple of them. The first one really deals with page 5 in the bottom there with the Industrial Siting Act. And what we would ask you to do with this amendment is to make sure that the Industrial Siting Act applies. Full stop, it applies. And the reason is we believe it's not at all preempted by anything in the Atomic Energy Act. Additionally, the language that is in the statute currently interfere with, contradict, or duplicate is confusing and vague. And we really do believe that it's important, again, full stop, the Industrial Siting Act applies. This is particularly important because, as Mr. Esch just spoke to you about, we're removing some of the public participation requirements that were previously available in Article 15 of the Environmental Quality Act. And so we believe there needs to be a process for local government, for the public, to really particularly look at the socioeconomic impacts and other issues related to the construction and development of this project. So again, in the interest of clarity, and I think also exercising your rights under the 10th Amendment to protect local government and the people of Wyoming, we would just really encourage you to clean up that part of the statute and make sure the Industrial Siting Act applies to this project. The second amendment I would talk to you about briefly is the taxes. And so this is page 9 of the bill. And it was mentioned on Friday, the House did an amendment here, but we have a proposal to, one, make the tax rate commensurate with the rate on wind, which is $1 per megawatt hour. Under the proposed bill as it stands, the $5 per megawatt hour actually sticks in statute. There's just an exemption attached to it in this bill. And we believe to make it commensurate with wind, it would be good to just make that $1 and then have it apply, but for the conditions that the House put forward in their amendment. And this is important to bring value back to Wyoming, to make sure that we're having the value from this project back to our state. And so that we do believe that there should be a tax associated with the generation of nuclear energy. This is particularly important because unless Wyoming uranium is actually used in the project, which again, at this time, it probably won't be, there won't be a severance tax or other resource values associated with the project like there would be coal or natural gas. So in the case of wind, the dollar per megawatt hour generation tax was really put in place to be almost a substitute for a severance tax, like tax structure for that energy resource. And we believe the same should apply in nuclear when, again, there might not be the same kind of severance tax revenue, either because uranium won't be used from Wyoming or because uranium, frankly, has a much lower severance tax rate than other resources in the state. And then the other proposed amendments I have for you are really some cleanup amendments. One involves this report that's in the bill. We just believe 30 days before the commencement of construction just doesn't give meaning to this report. And we would ask that you extend the timeline of when that report comes in. But again, the most important is really, I think, to restore full protection of the Industrial Siting Act. Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any questions for Shannon? Hearing none, thank you, Shannon.
Okay, thank you.
Up next. Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, there we go. Sean Murphy on behalf of myself, and I'm here on my own dime, which I think is important because we hear from a lot of groups and constituencies advocating and supporting their initiatives. And I came here to the legislature 3 weeks ago to support my son with some parent advocacy and blockchain industry, but I've taken a fancy to this bill and the economics. I'm an economic analyst and investor, and as I started looking at this, the first thing that I wanted to just make sure was on your radar was this 145-page report that's called Advanced Isn't Always Better. There's a whole chapter dedicated to the natrium technology, and I think it's worth looking at that. I've heard a lot of representatives in the House say, well, I'm not a nuclear physicist. That's right, they're not, but this is what the nuclear physicists are saying. Advanced isn't always better. So as we look at this as an investor, it's asymmetric risk, right? So the stakeholders, Berkshire Hathaway, Pacific Corp, TerraPower, they have tremendous upside, very little downside. Whereas I look at this for Wyoming, we have some upside, we have jobs, but we also have pretty steep downside risk. So what I'm advocating for, and I've put it in a report for the good members of this committee, is to slow down and not give away all of Wyoming's leverage. Because when you pass this bill, it takes away our leverage. There's no ability to negotiate with these effectively largest, most powerful businessmen and investors in the country. So I've put together 5 ideas, options to look at that if we were to slow down, we could, quote, get a better deal for Wyoming, end quote, right? I think that's really important. If we pass this legislation, if you move this through, all that leverage will be gone. We could do things like set up a fund with the Wyoming Business Council and have Warren Buffett, invest in that to help support these technologies. We could look at a program at the University of Wyoming to develop, nuclear graduate studies. And then something that I really want to put on the radar, because I'm just shocked I haven't heard anything about it, is fusion. This is the future. Fission's not the future. Nuclear fusion is. And it could take a couple of decades to get there. But these investors, Bill Gates and George Soros, they have invested in fusion companies. Like, this is on their radar, but I'm not seeing anything that they're doing to support the state or financial commitments to the state other than this project. So what I'm asking is we slow down, we look at what the physicists are saying, not just what legislators are saying, and we take the approach of how do we get a better deal for Wyoming and not give up all of the leverage. So I'd like to share my report with you, and it's been a real honor to be able to address this very weighty economic development option for Wyoming.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. Is there any questions for Mr. Murphy?
Chairman,
Question, yes.
who is the drafter of the report? I think I've.
It's called the Union of
Yeah, you see it,
Concerned
so-
Scientists.
Yep, I have written it. Okay, thanks.
Other questions?
Thank you.
I don't think we're gonna copy that and give it to all the committee. I think we'll let,
I will link everyone to it, though. It's easily found. Yeah, you did.
yeah, I think so.
Perfect,
Give that, wait a minute, give those to the secretary. She'll give them to us.
Okay.
Here you go, Mr. Murphy. Give those to the secretary, please. You already got yours. Okay, next. Mr. Winnie.
Mr. Chairman, Bill Winnie, Sublette County. Along the way of my career in the Navy Nuclear Propulsion Program, I served in the office of the Assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Atomic Energy and got some visibility into the civilian side of nuclear energy and so on. And I'd encourage the committee to take a little bit of a longer view, not in the sense of the previous person that spoke to you, but as you look how to set up nuclear in the Wyoming state government, I would encourage you to think in terms of a single point of contact that would bring together any other disciplines besides the environmental, which is what you see in front of you today in part, so that he has authority. We saw this with Admiral Rickover in the Navy program, because you had two parallel sides, one in the Department of Energy and one in the military in the Navy. And he was double-hatted, and he had authority to act for both sides. And you need that single point of contact, single authority. And so I'd encourage you to be thinking about that in the future. To the extent that siting allows, again, this is longer term, but you should be looking at replacing all of the conventional steam plants, power generation plants with a nuclear plant. I'd encourage you to be careful about words that you may hear from people about Chernobyl or Fukushima or even 3 Mile Island. Basically, the 3 Mile Island plant was a financial disaster only. They lost a lot of engineering stuff in there, but in real terms, it was financial only. The other two were fundamentally different problems from 3 Mile Island, and the Chernobyl plant itself was a very poor design by United States standards. As you talk about the natrium reactor, there are people that say there's drawbacks to it. And the Navy tried a sodium reactor in the early days when they built the Nautilus. They also built the Seawolf. And they decided the sodium type plant didn't work too well for ships. Maybe it'll work better here with people putting up their money. That remains to be seen, but be careful about hearing bugaboos from that. They talk about nuclear fuel coming from Russia. I would note that the Navy's nuclear fuel is in production from United States sources as we talk today. Subject to your questions, I would say thank you very much.
Questions for Mr. Winnie? Questions for Mr. Winnie? Hearing none, thank you, Mr. Winnie. As it's customary, I want to introduce some legislators in the room. Representative Heiner is with us today. Representative Sweeney is with us today. Thank you. Representative Burkhart is with us today. Thank you. And President Dockstader is with us today. Thank you. We've heard from quite a bit of the room. Can we move to the Zoom? Is the room still has 2 more? Okay, let's go with you then. Is it on?
I think so.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of Senate Minerals Committee. My name is John Burrows, and I'm here representing the Wyoming Outdoor Council. First off, I want to recognize that a lot of time and energy have gone into working this bill. We know it was studied and tabled in the interim, and it's been a source of a lot of good debate and very, very important questions for the state of Wyoming and its energy future. We've been following these discussions and want to share some concerns that have been brought to our attention and urge caution and transparency if you all decide to move this bill forward today. But just like you all, we've been hearing a lot and learning a lot about advanced nuclear reactors recently. And we know that there are many Wyomingites out there who have questions about what this project and others like it could mean for their community, their economy, and their environment. And it seems very reasonable given the scale and potential impacts that are anticipated from a $4 billion investment in a demonstration project backed by one of the world's wealthiest entrepreneurs. We should recognize this for what it is. It's an experiment. And many people, not just in Wyoming, are watching to see if we pull this off successfully. So with that in mind, I have two primary concerns with the bill we hope you'll address and take into consideration. The first relates, as you heard earlier in testimony, to ensuring that Wyoming uses the full authority of its Industrial Siting Act to maximize, to the maximum extent possible, as it moves forward in its efforts to bring advanced nuclear reactors to small rural communities in the state. Second is to guarantee that transparency and accountability are proactively built into policy here so that the public has meaningful ways to participate, engage as this project and others move forward. So first, with regards to the Industrial Siting Act, we urge the state to exercise its maximum authority to regulate public health and safety where it can. We understand that the state has no authority to regulate radiological safety and that this is preempted by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. But the state can and it should use its authority to regulate other social, economic, and environmental matters as they relate to the impacts of these projects on communities. The other concern that we urge you to consider is the need for a transparent platform where the public, community leaders, interested parties, even elected officials can access reports and objective information about this project as it moves through its multi-year permitting and construction phase. We believe that this is something that the state, whose responsibility it is to protect the public interest, should be responsible for managing. And such a platform would help address many of the questions and concerns of the public, allow for transparency and objectivity, and keep the public apprised of important updates, decisions, and public input opportunities in the future. But finally, I'll conclude by saying what you already know. Bringing nuclear energy to Wyoming could be one of the most significant policy decisions we've faced in decades. Although this legislation has improved significantly, we still don't think it's quite ripe. We've heard in previous testimony on this bill that we have time to get it right before a building permit is needed by the end of next year. We encourage you to keep working this policy over the interim and next year's general session. So thank you. I'm happy to stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Brose. Any questions for Mr. Brose? Any questions? Any questions? Thank you, Mr. Brose.
Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Yes. We'll have your name right after you give it to us. Oh, Susan Gore.
And I'm associated with the Wyoming Liberty Group. And I've been very interested to take a careful look at nuclear energy. And so I can say a few things, but my request for you is to ask your questions, not how to go about it, but whether to go about it. I have read that the retired nuclear regulatory people from Germany, France, UK, and United States have made a very strong statement against continuation, and I will get that to you. I come across a few points. One of the things that Mr. Winnie mentioned was sodium coolant, which wasn't effective in the nuclear submarines. I've also read statements by the champion of nuclear submarines, Admiral Rickover, that he decided they were too expensive, too hard to maintain, and not safe. And he didn't think it was effective to continue those programs. Although I know that the facilities themselves hire former nuclear submarine people for technical reasons for their projects. I came across background on the history of nuclear. It, of course, started early development, a lot of excitement, even beginning in the Second World War and afterwards. But then in the mid-90s, the nuclear industry was very successful. They were pulling in millions a day. And they had sort of a heyday until the mid-2000s when the oil prices came up. And that rise in oil prices enabled fracking to come along. And we know that from our own Jonah field. And we know that that is what's really the demise of coal, but it was also the demise of economic nuclear. Now, I know that TerraPower was founded in about 2006 as Bill Gates was the chairman. I inquired some inquiries about their funding. In 2010, they got seed money, 35 million. And then Bill Gates invested, but that's unknown. And then the Department of Energy came in 2016. And now you're familiar with the more recent 35 and 80 million. So it's highly subsidized. So these subsidies, okay. I just then quickly continue, I'm sorry, but I just continue that there are a lot of failures. They subsidize, again, the Journal Bulletin of Atomic Scientists have a sort of a table of sodium reactors. I think there are about 8 or 10 of them, and only 2 are operating, one in India and one in Russia, because they are the problem with sodium leaks. Sodium reacts with water, oxygen, and then the whole thing has to be shut down. That's tidbits, but I would please consider whether as well as how. Thank you. Would imagine
Ms. Gore. Questions, no questions.
you.
Thank you very much for coming. Just so everyone knows, this bill does not have anything to do with that plant that's going in at Kemmer. This is about the future of nuclear plants in Wyoming. The one in Kemmer operates under the present rules. It can operate under the present rules, and that's what it will be operating under. So it does not require this bill. That was the rest of them in the room. Then we will hear from the ones on Zoom. Do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm bringing in Dr. Lee from Sheridan. And if he'll turn on his screen and his microphone when he gets in, and you can hear him then. You should be in.
Dr. Lee, go ahead when you get your.
Hi. Yeah, I have can you hear me?
Yes.
I have my microphone, but I don't know why my picture isn't showing.
There was. It's okay. You can
It's
go
okay?
ahead. Yes.
Okay, there, I'm sorry. There it is. It was my fault. It was my mistake. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, I am Dr. Jimmy D. Lees. My degree is a PhD in mathematics. I am a volunteer lobbyist for the Republican Women of Sheridan County, which has approximately 170 members. One of our topics of concern, adopted by an almost unanimous vote, is the protection of Wyoming's natural resources, within which we oppose unsafe nuclear proposals. Now, then that is what I represent for the group. The rest of what I'm about to say is I represent myself. The company TerraPower is working to build a demonstration that is experimental nuclear reactor, operate it with Russian uranium, and store permanent nuclear waste. World-renowned energy economist Michael Snyder says the natrium reactors are not close to being fully designed and, quote, are far from an operating pilot plant. We are more than a decade away from anything on the ground. According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, the non-light water reactors, quote, fail to provide significant enough improvements over the light water reactors to justify their considerable risks, unquote. The science to solve their problems is not projected to be resolved until the 2030s. Sodium is dangerous and has significant disadvantages. On contact with air, it burns. Plunged into water, it explodes. 3 nuclear plants closed in 2021 in Germany, and the final 3 will close in 2022. Germany's environment minister, Steffi Lemke has said it would be, quote, absolutely wrong, unquote, to include nuclear energy on the green energy list, arguing that atomic power, quote, can lead to devastating environmental catastrophes. The German government said in January that it considers nuclear energy dangerous. Berlin plans to rely heavily on natural gas until it can be replaced by
2 minutes,
non-polluting
Dr. Lee.
sources for energy. The government spokesman, Stefan Heibenstreit, said the German government's goal is to use natural gas as a bridge technology and replace it with non-polluting alternatives such as hydrogen produced with renewable energy by 2045. We consider nuclear technology to be dangerous. Noting the question of what to do with nuclear waste that will last for thousands of generations remains unsolved. With the potential for devastating environmental catastrophes and thousands of years of life-threatening nuclear waste, this is the opposite of a climate-friendly solution. There is a myriad of safe methods to produce energy. One is in Wyoming, we should consider geothermal energy.
3 minutes,
Although-
Dr. Lee.
Okay, my time is up, but I would like to ask the committee to consider geothermal energy, much as managed by the Bureau of Land Management. And I just ask that Wyoming not become a testing ground for continuing failed programs other countries have and are abandoning. Please protect Wyoming and oppose HB 131. Thank you so much for your time and your work on this.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Any questions for Dr. Lee? Questions for Dr. Lee? Thank you, Dr. Lee, for your testimony. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
with us. Who's next?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm bringing in Mr. Jeff Navin from Washington, D.C.
If I could ever learn that there's
And
an
if he'll
S,
turn
it would
his
be
screen
Los
on and his microphone on. Thank you.
All right, I've got my video on. I don't know if you can see me or if you can hear me.
We can hear you, Jeff. We can't see you, but go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks, members of the committee, for all of your work on this. I just wanted to reiterate our support for this bill. It makes a number of changes that we think are going to be that will be necessary to help bring the Natrium plant online in Kemmerer. The biggest one is in the current law. There's a restriction on the megawatt size, and we're a couple of clicks above that. So this would clarify that. But I appreciate all the work that the committee has put in to making this law fit for Wyoming. And most importantly, just wanted to make myself available for questions to the committee. One point I would like to address, because the last time that I addressed you in a joint session, things have changed a little bit as regard to the fuel, and I just wanted to give you a little sense as to where we are. As has been noted in previous testimony and in the debate, right now, our reactor will use high assay, low enriched uranium in order to fuel our reactor. Right now, the only commercial plant that makes HALEU is in Russia. Obviously, given circumstances that are happening there right now, that is not where we want to purchase our fuel, and we are actively looking at things that we can do to expedite the development of domestic HALEU enrichment capacity in the United States. That builds on some investment that we as a company have made into that enrichment capacity previously. Our intention when we started this conversation was to use HALEU from Russia for our first core load and then move to domestic sources, which is obviously good for Wyoming, as that it would make it more likely that Wyoming uranium could be used for that process. We're now looking to try to figure out additional ways that we can access the HALEU for our initial core load. We just don't think that that Russia is a reliable supplier, and obviously, given what's happening right now, we do not want to be entering into any contracts with Russia for our fuel. So as soon as we have I wish I had a more fulsome answer for you today that I could tell you explicitly that we're going to be procuring our HALEU from this or that domestic source. but we are working in real time to try to figure out what additional options we might have. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions that you, Mr. Chairman, have, or any other members of the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Navin. Any questions for Mr. Navin? Any questions? I have a question. If that fuel was not available, even maybe from Russia, depending on what happens in the future, could you switch your fuel to some other fuel? Is there any possibility?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Mr. Chairman. Probably not. For our reactor to operate, we operate at a we are a fast neutron source reactor, so we do need that higher enrichment level. We couldn't operate, for example, on the low enriched uranium that traditional plants operate on. You know, that said, one of the options that we are exploring, we've been talking to Senator Barrasso's office about this, is first and foremost expediting the ability of U.S. companies to enrich up to that level, and then secondly, looking at some of the material that's within the DOE's possession that could be down blended or otherwise enriched to a ability for us to use that in our first core load. So lots of promising conversations. As you all know, sometimes it takes a crisis to focus attention on a national need, and this is certainly seen as that. So we're doing everything we can to expedite the ability of domestic sources, and hopefully the next time we chat, we'll have a more clear picture for you.
Mr. Navin, if we had a U.S. facility that could it enrich waste from other plants and get you the HALEU you need?
It's technically possible. That's called reprocessing or nuclear recycling. There is a federal law that prohibits the United States from engaging in reprocessing at the moment, largely because non-friendly states have sometimes used reprocessing as a way to produce material for weapons programs. So we have a prohibition on it. We are not actively seeking that option at the moment, but it's technically possible that we would just have to change some of the federal laws and rethink some of that approach. And TerraPower is not advocating that at the moment, but I know that there are a number of companies and technologists around the country who are exploring that option.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Navin. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We're bringing over Maria Catherman from Douglas. If she would turn on her mic and her camera.
Maria, are you on there? Maria, are you going to join us? It looks like you're going to.
There she is.
She's coming.
She's connecting to audio.
Maria, we're ready for you whenever you're ready. You have 3 minutes.
She needs, there, she turned off her mic, or turned her mic on. Thank you.
Hopefully you can hear me now.
Yes.
Okay, I live on a place between Glenrock and Douglas.
Can you give us your name, please, Maria?
Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Maria Catherman.
Okay, thank you.
And I live in a place between Douglas and Glenrock and have been following this ever since it started up, just because Glenrock was in the running. And as was true then is still true now, I'm really concerned about the impacts to the community where this is going to happen. And I think that we have to consider that really strongly. There is a lot of impact about housing. There's impact about community prices for the people that still live there. And without reinstating the full authority of the Siting Act, I don't see a mechanism for the state to help out the communities. And to me, that's absolutely basic. It's kind of like taking out your smoke alarm because you're going to bring in the charcoal barbecue and you know the alarm's going to go off. So I think the Siding Council is the mechanism that has been designed to help us, and abandoning it now is just not the right thing to do. And along with that, we need a process for local engagement, because the people that are in Kemmerer obviously need to have an outsized voice in this about what their community needs, and not just from the elected officials, but the people themselves. You know, it's kind of a fiat, and no one has really asked for public comment. And so I would like to see that there would be a continuing way for the people to get in touch with the Siding Council with their problems, get in touch with you all,
Catherine.
and continue. So, so that's my main issue, is the Siding Act should be fully authorized in this project. I would also encourage you to look at how we can protect against waste storage in Wyoming. There's no permanent storage in this country, and to me, this opens the possibility that we would not only be saddled with somehow keeping this as a so-called temporary storage, but it will be permanent until that problem is solved. And I don't see that being addressed by the people that are bringing this project, and I don't see it being addressed at a state level or the national level. So it's important that Wyoming protects from that. So
3 minutes, Ms. Catherine.
really, I think the
Wrap it up.
good issues, I think the good issues that others have brought up need to be taken really seriously, because it's not just a matter of economics. It's really a matter of the questions that we people in Wyoming have about this process. So I'd like to thank the Senate Minerals Committee for accepting testimony on this continuing. And I've really enjoyed listening to the discussion in the legislature on this topic, because I think you're taking it seriously, and I really appreciate that.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Ms. Catherine. We sure are. We have been for a couple of years now. Any questions for Ms. Catherine? Any questions for Ms. Catherine? Thank you, Ms. Catherine.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any on others on the Zoom?
Mr. Chairman, the last person is Michelle Irwin from Green River, and I brought her over. She'll turn on her mic and her screen.
Good morning, Chairman Anderson and committee. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you have 3 minutes, Michelle.
Okay. Happy 307 Day. I'm Michelle Irwin, zooming in from Southwest Wyoming. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the public process regarding House Bill 131. I registered to participate with my work email in the interest of full disclosure of my employment as a community organizer for Powder River Basin Resource Council. I work on energy and economic transition in this region, and I'm also a registered lobbyist with PRBRC. But I speak to you this morning as a fellow Wyomingite. This bill, as you mentioned, is about a lot more than the process of TerraPower and Kemmerer. But much of the testimony that has been made has referred to a survey that seems to have significance, while a larger public discussion is being discouraged. Like a lot of folks, when I first heard the news about the TerraPower project, I was excited. Then I tuned into the minerals meeting held in Casper in December and learned a lot more about the project, mostly from the TerraPower representative. It turns out that the project will not be built on the site of the Naughton plant, that the Kemmerer site was chosen for its proximity to the Utah workforce, and that there is no intent to ever pay taxes on power generated from the project. I also learned that Wyoming is one of a handful of states that doesn't allow nuclear waste. I learned that from my colleague, who was also testifying that day. Since then, we've learned a few more things about the project, and the latest integrated resource plan from Pacific Corps has rolled out with a focus on conservation. The utility has not yet signed off on the Terra Power project and would need to make decisions based on the grid's interest. In our multi-state agreement, the states who receive the power and pay for it will have at least some say in the decision, and so far seem not to be thrilled with either nuclear or the experimental and costly Terra Power project. To further make me lose support for this project is the current state of global affairs and the understanding that the current sources are limited to Russia. As a Wyomingite, I don't think any of us want to put our state on a map to be a target for war or waste. I urge you to hit the pause button and focus on larger issues during the interim that have to do with revenue and economic diversity, and pull us back from the brink this energy-centric focus has us on.
3 minutes. 3 minutes, Michelle. Go ahead and wrap it up.
Thank you. I'm done. Any
Good
questions?
wrap-up. Okay, good wrap up. Okay, we have one more in the room. We have any more on Zoom? No more on Zoom. This Talon isn't. Okay. Okay, all right, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Tammy Johnson with Wyoming State AFL-CIO. I appreciate the opportunity to testify this last minute. I want to assure you that we have been working closely with Terra Power at both the national level and at the state level to develop the workforce for this project. The National Association of Building Trades Union is currently working on a project to develop training centers around the state so that we can engage Wyoming workers, get them trained and get them here. Certainly, we won't be able to provide everybody from the state for the highly skilled jobs, but we are doing our very best to bring in to create work for workers who live here in Wyoming. If there's anything that I have been passionate about as I've presented before you in these committee meetings, it's about getting Wyoming workers on the jobs first. That is my job. That's what I'm overseeing. I have had no conversations with people about workers coming from Utah to take jobs from Wyoming workers. I just wanted to assure you of that. We are on the ground and we are doing everything we can to work with Terra Power. I know their interest is also in hiring Wyoming workers. So I just want to give you that assurance that we're working very hard on that.
Very good, very good, thank you. Any questions? Any questions? No? All right, I think that takes care of Zoom and the room. Is that correct? I want to make sure everybody has had a chance to talk about this. We've had multiple public meetings where we've had people talk about this subject. You heard in December, you heard, we've been hearing it for 2 years. So it's a little hard to say that we haven't had time to talk about this. The other thing about this is a 7 to 10 year window. This isn't tomorrow. So we're talking about putting it on pause. It is on pause. Even though the company may be working on it, it's going to be a long time before they have anything in fruition. So it'll be a long time before we see other nuclear plants also. So Representative Burkhart, would you like to bring us home on this, please?
Thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, committee, as I said in my opening remarks, this bill is about jobs. It's about the future of Wyoming. And I think other states have seen this. I'll remind the committee that after the announcement was made of a potential nuclear power plant in Wyoming, the state to the north of us actually called the company and said, wait, don't go to Wyoming, come here instead. Other states, including some what most of us would describe as liberal states in the central part of the country, have passed laws encouraging the development of nuclear power. So this isn't something we're doing on our own or something strange or anything else. It's our future. It's a way to expand our STEM economy, which I had a very reputable, well-known for one of the largest banks in the country tell me that this is the direction he felt Wyoming needed to be working in, and that we were primed to go in that direction: science, technology, engineering, mathematics. Another discussion with one of the top officials for one of the largest banks in the world made a comment to me of, why hasn't Wyoming done more faster? And I told him, we have our processes and we're working on it. So it is about jobs. It's about jobs for the future, and not just really high-tech jobs. These are well-paying jobs. The average job at a nuclear power plant pays about 10% more than other power plants due to the nature of the training they have to go through and the licensing that the operators need and that sort of thing. So I think this is a direction we need to go. I'll use my own children as an example. My two sons have advanced degrees from UW. They've had to leave the state to get jobs. One has managed to find a job and come back, and the other one would like to, but those jobs aren't here. And this is what we're doing. We're planning for our children's future. We're giving them a future where they can succeed right here in the state in a variety of things. The options a nuclear power plant bring are tremendous. You can produce hydrogen from the coal seam where these are located. You can use those to power the power plants, which is probably one of the waves of the future. And it gives us the technology to do this. One of the Scandinavian countries is currently considering using hydrogen to produce all their steel. We can do the same thing. We can bring those technologies here, and this is just an opening to start doing that. So I would encourage the aye vote of the committee. If I can answer any questions, I'd be glad to.
Questions for Representative Burkhart, please. Questions for Representative Burkhart. And he made it in less time.
3 seconds left.
Yeah, he had a little time left. Any questions? Any
Practice.
questions? Any questions? Hearing none, thank you, Representative Burkhart.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Bill Talon has now raised his hand online.
Oh.
What is your pleasure?
Let's hear from him.
Mr. Talon, would you please turn on your mic and your video, please?
Mr. Talon, go ahead. You've got 3 minutes. If you're at Lincoln, you could make a speech in that time. Mr. Talon, are you going to go ahead? There he is.
There we go. Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Yes.
My name is Bill Talon. I've been a resident of the Cody area for about 10 years now. Speaking in opposition to this bill on behalf of myself, I'm not an expert on civilian nuclear power issues, but I am an informed layman, more familiar than most with nuclear technology. I retired from the Department of Energy, National Nuclear Security Administration in 2009. Have a master's degree in national security and strategic studies from the U.S. Naval War College. My career field was secure transportation of nuclear weapons and special nuclear material throughout the United States. I have no animus towards nuclear technology at all, but I have some specific concerns regarding the TerraPower project, which I think outweigh its purported advantages for Wyoming. I recently addressed several questions to Mr. Navin, who we heard earlier, of TerraPower. I shared with Senate members of the committee my email thread in that regard. Several of the answers that I received were neither complete nor reassuring. I'll try to keep this as short as I can. My concerns are first in the area of security and non-proliferation. The HALEU fuel, high-assay, low-enriched uranium fuel, is, according to Mr. Navin, between 5% and 20% enrichment, to quote him. That is a significant difference. 20% is the threshold for highly enriched uranium, which is usable in nuclear weapons and is also easily enriched to higher levels, which is even more attractive for nuclear weapons use. As such, this HALEU fuel is an attractive target for prospective nuclear weapon states or terrorist organizations. and it would require considerable attention paid to security in its fabrication, in its transportation, and in its utilization as reactor fuel. Secondarily, in the same area, fast reactors like the Natrium reactor are capable of use as plutonium breeders, producing significant quantities of plutonium, which is useful as reactor fuel. There's a tremendous economic incentive because it produces plutonium by neutron bombardment of the 99% of natural uranium, which is otherwise inert and useless. Unfortunately, it's also the material of choice for use in nuclear weapons. And we have, at this point, no clear commitment from TerraPower that they will not utilize this capability. And even if they do, this design, which will then be utilized by TerraPower to produce modular reactors that they intend to market worldwide, every one of which is capable of acting as a plutonium breeder. And so my question there is this the legacy that Wyoming wants? And I would suggest that it is not. My second major area of concern is safety. You've heard a little bit of these points raised by other speakers.
You've got 3 minutes.
There are potential safety issues that have been well understood for decades. Sodium-cooled fast reactors are nothing new. We have lots of experience with them. Sodium burns when it's exposed to water. It creates hydrogen in contact with water, and hydrogen, of course, is explosive. And there is potential for runaway power excursions if this sodium coolant.
Can you please wrap it up, Mr. Taylor?
And then also as a safety issue, there is the spent fuel storage on site. Very familiar with this from my career involvement in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you for your testimony. You had 3 minutes and you went almost 4. So we're glad to hear from you. All good comments. Thank you very much. I think that wraps it up. On Zoom and in the room. We're going to close public comment on House Bill 131 and committee. What is your pleasure? Move by Cooper, second by Wasserberger. Any discussion, anything you'd like to do or change or fix or? Yes, Senator Rothfuss.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I do have a few amendments proposed. The first is going back to the PSC amendments. I think everybody has them somewhere.
You have these? Yeah.
Yep, I would propose the amendment on page 8, line 6, which is the second one that they offer. After conversion to, insert or replacement with. And as part of the same amendment, because it's the same concept, page 8, line 22, after 2, insert an electric public utility that replaces a coal-fired electric generation facility with. That's the motion.
Page 8, line 6, is that what that says?
Correct. Wait, is that the one where we decided the numbers were off slightly?
I think something's off here, yeah.
Hold on,
Page 8, line 6.
I forgot about that.
Recommended technical change conversion to, yeah, that's on line 7.
That's the one that's on 7, that's
Yeah.
right, they had missed that
Yeah.
number slightly, so my apologies.
Page 8, line 7.
Page 8, line 7, after conversion to, insert comma or replacement with.
Yeah.
And I think
okay.
the other line
And
is
the other was
correct, though.
okay, wasn't it?
Yeah, I believe so. We'll double check. After 2, insert an electric, yep, that's fine, an electric
Okay,
public utility.
all right.
So I move those 2 proposals from the PSC.
Is there a second? Second by Wasserberger. Any discussion, any discussion? Any discussion, any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. That amendment carries. Any other amendments to come before the
Chairman?
committee? Yes. Senator
On
Rothfuss.
the list of suggested amendments that Ms. Anderson brought,
Yes,
on the second page,
second page,
yeah, go to page 2 of that.
okay.
There is some language that makes the reporting requirements more robust, and so you see page 4 and page 7. I don't think I'm going to use their exact language, but I like and appreciate the concept of improving the reporting requirements, and we've had some other requests to do that as well. So if you're looking at page 4,
10 through 15.
you see the Romanet 7 there. Yeah, don't do that, but you see on the Romanet 7 that we have.
Okay,
On line 14, right now, it's not later than 15 days after the operator sends or receives the report. I would move to amend to insert after the word facility as soon as practicable, comma, but not later than, and then change the 15 to 5 days after the operator sends or receives the report. So there is a 5-day possibility, but with the language as soon as practicable. And I would make the same amendment on page 7 in the G paragraph, which has mirror language. And I can repeat that again.
yeah, why don't you repeat it
Okay.
for page 7, you say?
Yeah, it's on page 7. The G paragraph is mirrored language of what we saw on the Romanet 7. So just do it again. And the way that it would read in that instance is it says, or the operator of the facility as soon as practicable, comma, but not later than 5 days after the operator sends or receives the report. And that's my motion in 2 places, and I'll have a little follow-up, but I'll keep them separate. Yeah, as soon as
Is there a
practicable.
second? Is there a second on that?
in 5 days.
Two motions that are the same? Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded, okay, on page 4 and on page 7.
7, yep.
Page 4, right,
Is that
yep,
part of
page
it?
4 and page 7.
And that's on
Do
7.
you have that one, Carla? You understand what he's saying? Okay, any discussion on that amendment? Any discussion on that amendment? Hearing,
It goes in
oh, wait a minute.
this paragraph.
Yep. All the same
All
language
the
there.
same.
Yep.
You okay? All right, all in favor of that amendment, signify by saying aye. All opposed, same sign. That amendment carries. Is there any other
And,
amendments?
Mr. Chairman,
Committee.
there was also a request that you see on that second page of Ms. Anderson's suggestion where she has it listed at page 4, line 15 after report.
Yes,
The suggestion is to add a sentence. The operator shall also transmit all information required under this subsection to emergency management departments of the local governments where the facility is located. That seems like good practice. But I would add to that and make it freely available on a public website. So that's the operator's obligation, and make it freely available on a public website.
and that's after located?
Exactly. It might not be the best language in the world, but it does what it's supposed to do. So it would read, the operator shall also transmit all information required under this subsection to emergency management departments of the local governments where the facility is located and make it freely available on a public website. These are public reports. It says that in the language above. So it's organizing it. It's not releasing anything that can't be released. So that's my motion, would be to add that. And it is, as suggested, page 4, line 15, but it's also going to be, again, mirrored, page 7, line 7. So this is twice.
At the end of the
Yep.
paragraph.
Just tacking it right on the
In
two
the end of the
paragraphs.
paragraph.
Yep, page 4,
You got that, Carl?
line 15, and
Okay.
page 7,
Is there a second?
line 7.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Was.
And
Discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say that all this does is provide the transparency. I've heard a lot of asks for transparency. This provides transparency. And all of this is publicly available information. The only difference is ensuring that it goes to the right place in a timely way, and it's easier to find by the public. So no required disclosures that wouldn't be disclosed.
Other discussion? Other discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the amendment to change page 4, line 15, and page, what was the other one? Page 7?
Line
7,
7.
line 7?
Yep.
Signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. That amendment carries.
That's all I got.
Any other changes, amendments, corrections, deletions, additions? come before the Senate committee. You're getting that down, aren't you?
He's writing all up.
Yeah, for a real reason. Okay, that's all the changes. Let's have a vote. Let's have a roll call vote, please.
Senator Beitman provided absentee vote of do pass. Senator Cooper.
Aye.
Senator Rothfuss.
Aye.
Senator Wasserberger.
Aye.
Chairman Anderson.
Aye.
That's
That
5.
bill squeaked through, and I think Senator Wasserberger is going to carry that on the floor. Is that correct? We'll help you. We'll help you, man. We'll correct you when you go wrong.
We got your back.
We got your back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I
would
love to.
Oh, good. Senator Wasserberger will do that then.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I see that we have Representatives Blackburn and Provenza joining us
Oh.
the latter half of the meeting. I don't think you saw them walk in, so
I
wanted to
didn't know.
welcome their
Welcome,
participation as
welcome.
well. And it's good to see Senator Blackburn, or excuse me,
back.
Representative Blackburn, happy and healthy and smiling back there. Welcome. Senator, Representative, it's all the same. Right? Welcome.
All right, there's nothing else to come before the committee. We're adjourned 20 minutes to 2. Wow, great job. Great.